morning. Boker Tov, welcome. It's so nice to be home again. Yes. Actually, it was interesting when we got to near Napier last time and the motorbike stopped. I thought, oh, maybe God's telling me something. But you never know. Maybe I was reading too much into it. I was relaxing. I was resting just on the motorbike. But it was actually a good time to just reflect. While one is waiting for tow trucks and all those sort of things. It was actually a good time. Just to enjoy and look around and enjoy the things that Elohim has made for us. You know, it's just beautiful out there. So if you don't get out and about that much, I encourage you to do it and enjoy His creation. Enjoy the beautiful things that are there. It's so nice. And a wonderful time when there's no one else around, just to be spending time just talking and discussing things with God. Trust you've been doing that this week. Wonderful. But it is wonderful to be back in New Zealand. We are a very blessed and spoilt country, irrespective of the things that seem to happen in different parts of our little worlds and within the country, the political scenes, etc. We are very blessed to be here. So I encourage you, don't take it for granted. But it really helps you to pray for those that don't have what we have, especially pray for the Middle East and the things that occur over there. Be interceding for them on their behalf, and that's the really important thing that we do. It's wonderful. So let's rise together as we honour Yavo, as we honour Him, bring praise. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kavod, Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. And you shall love Adonai, your God, with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength. And these words which I'm commanding you today are to be on your heart, and you teach them diligently to your children, and to speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. Bind them as a sign on your hand, and they are to be a frontlets between your eyes. And write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And you shall love your neighbour as yourself. And the entire Torah and the prophets hang on these two commandments.
God of mercy, full of grace. Fantastic.
Jacob's ladder from heaven. Then Jacob left Beersheba and went to Haran. He happened upon a certain place and spent the night there, for the sun had set. So he took one of the stones from the place and put it by his head and lay down in that place. He dreamed. All of a sudden there was a stairway set up on the earth, and its top reaching to the heavens, and behold, angels of God going up and down on it. Surprisingly, Adonai was standing on top of it, and he said, I am Adonai, the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give it to you and to your seed. Your seed will be as the dust of the land, and you will burst forth to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. And in all the families of the earth will be blessed, and in your seed. Behold, I am with you, and I will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land, for I will not forsake you until I have done what I promised you. Jacob woke up from his sleep and said, Undoubtedly Adonai is in this place, and I was unaware. So he was afraid, and he said, How fearsome this place is! This is none other than the house of God. This must be the gate of heaven. Early in the morning, Jacob got up and took the stone which he had placed by his head and set it up as a memorial stone and poured oil on top of it. He called the name of the place Beth-El, though originally the city's name was Luz. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, If God will be with me and watch over me on this way that I am going, and provide me with food to eat and clothes to wear, and I return in shalom to my father's house, then Adonai will be my God. So the stone which I set up as a memorial stone will become God's house, and of everything you provide me, I will definitely give a tenth of it to you.
So Jacob lifted his feet and went toward the land of the Easterners. He looked, and behold, a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep lay there beside it. For from that well they would water the flocks, and the stone over the mouth of the well was large. When all the flocks would be assembled, there they would roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep. Then they would put back the stone over the mouth of the well in its place. Jacob said to them, My brothers, where are you from? And they said, We are from Haran. He said to them, Do you know Laban the son of Nahor? And they said, We know. Then he said to them, Is it well with them? He answered, It is well, and see, his daughter Rachel is coming with the flock. He said, Look, the day is still long. It's not yet time to bring the livestock in. Water the flocks and go on grazing. But they said, We will be unable to until all the flocks will have gathered, and they roll the stone off the mouth of the well. We will then water the flock. While he was still speaking with them, Rachel had arrived with her father's flock, for she was a shepherdess. And it was when Jacob saw Rachel, daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the flock of Laban, his mother's brother, Jacob came forward and rolled the stone off the mouth of the well and watered the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel, and he raised his voice and wept. Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's relative and that he was Rebekah's son. Then she ran and told her father. And it was when Laban heard the news of Jacob, his sister's son, he ran toward him, embraced him, kissed him, and took him to his house. He recounted to Laban all these events. Then Laban said to him, Nevertheless, you are my flesh and blood. And he stayed with him a month's time. Then Laban said to Jacob, Just because you are my relative, should you serve me for nothing? Tell me, what are your wages? Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older one was Leah, and the name of the younger one was Rachel. Leah's eyes were tender, while Rachel was beautiful of form and beautiful of appearance. Jacob loved Rachel, and he said, I will work for you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. Laban said, It is better that I give her to you than that I give her to another man. Remain with me. So Jacob worked 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him a few days because of his love for her.
Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, for my days are completed, so I may go to her." So Laban gathered all the men of the place, and he prepared a feast. When it was evening, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to him, and he went to her. Laban also gave her Zilpah, his female servant, to his daughter Leah as a female servant. So when it was morning, behold, there she was, Leah. So he said to Laban, "What is this you've done to me? Wasn't it for Rachel that I worked with you? So why have you deceived me?" But Laban said, "It's not done so in our place, to give the younger before the firstborn. Complete the bridal week for this one, then we'll also give you this other, for work that you'll do with me another 7 years more." So Jacob did. He also completed this one's bridal week. Then he gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban also gave his daughter Rachel his female servant Bilhah to be a servant for her. Jacob also went to Rachel, and indeed loved Rachel more than Leah, so he served with him for yet another 7 years. Now Adonai saw that Leah was unloved, so he opened her womb, but Rachel was unable to conceive. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son, and named him Reuben, because she said, "For Adonai has seen my affliction. Surely now my husband will love me." Then she became pregnant again and gave birth to a son, and said, "For Adonai heard that I am hated, so he's given me this one also." And she named him Simeon. Then she became pregnant again and gave birth to a son, and said, "Now this time my husband will join himself to me, because I've given birth to 3 sons for him." For this reason he was named Levi.
Then she became pregnant again and gave birth to a son, and said, "This time I praise Adonai." For this reason she named him Judah. Then she stopped having children. When Rachel saw that she bore no children for Jacob, Rachel was jealous of her sister. So she said to Jacob, "Give me sons. If there are none, I'll die." But Jacob became furious with Rachel and said, Am I instead of God, the one who withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" So she said, "Here's my maid servant Bilhah. Go to her and let her give birth on my knees, so that from her I may also build a family." Then she gave her maid servant Bilhah to him for a wife, and Jacob went to her. Bilhah became pregnant and gave birth to a son for Jacob. So Rachel said, "God has judged my cause and also heard my voice, and given me a son." Therefore she named him Dan. Then Rachel's female servant became pregnant again and gave birth to a second son for Jacob. So Rachel said, "I'm surely wrestled greatly with my sister. Also I've won." So she named him Naphtali. Then Leah saw that she stopped having children, so she took Zilpah, her female servant, and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Then Zilpah, Leah's female servant, gave birth to a son for Jacob. Leah said, How fortunate!" So she named him Gad. Then Zilpah, Leah's female servant, gave birth to a second son for Jacob. Leah said, "How happy am I, for daughters have called me happy." So she named him Asher. Now during the days of the wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrake in the field, and he brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrake." But she said to her, "Wasn't it enough that you took my husband away? You'd also take away my son's mandrake. So Rachel said, that being so, let him lie with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrake. So when Jacob came from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him, and she said, you must come to me, for I've actually hired you for my son's mandrakes. So he lay with her that very night. Moreover, God heard Leah, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a fifth son for Jacob. Leah said, God gave me my reward because I gave my female servant to my husband. So she named him Issachar. Then Leah became pregnant again and gave birth to a sixth son for Jacob. Leah said, God has presented me a good gift. This time my husband will honor me, for I have borne 6 sons for him. So she named him Zebulun. Afterwards, she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. Then she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. So she said, God has taken away my disgrace. She named him Joseph, saying, my Adonai add another son for me.
Verse 29. Now it was after Rachel gave birth to Joseph that Jacob said to Laban, send me away so that I can go to my place and to my land. Give me my wives and my children for whom I've served you, and let me go, for you yourself know my labour, that I've served you. But Laban said to him, if I've found favour in your eyes, I've looked for good omens, and Adonai has blessed me because of you. Moreover, he said, name your own price, and I will pay it. Then he said to him, you yourself know how I've served you, and how your livestock fared with me. For you had very little before I came, and it has been bursting at the seams in abundance. So Adonai blessed you with me, with my every step. So now, when am I myself going to make something for my household also? Then he said, what can I pay you? And Jacob said, you don't need to pay me anything. If you will do this one thing for me, I will shepherd your flock again and watch it. Let me pass through your flock today, removing every colourful spotted lamb from there and every dark-coloured lamb among the sheep as well, as the colourful spotted among the goats, and that will be my salary. So tomorrow my honesty will testify on my behalf. When you come to check on my salary you agreed to, every one that isn't colourful, spotted among the goats, or dark-coloured among the sheep with me, it is stolen. So Laban said, all right, may it be according to your word. On that day, he removed the colourful striped and colourful billy goats as well as all the colourful spotted goats, every one with white on it, and every dark-coloured one among the lambs. And he put them in the hand of his sons. Then he put a 3 days' journey between them and Jacob, while Jacob was shepherding Laban's remaining flocks. But Jacob took fresh white poplar, almond, and plane tree branches, peeled away white stripped sections on them, exposing the white of the branches. Then he set the branches he had peeled in front of the flocks in the drinking troughs and watering channels where the flocks came to drink, since they were in heat when they came to drink. And the flocks mated near the branches, and the flocks gave birth to striped, spotted, and colourful ones. Now Jacob separated the lambs and set the faces of the flocks towards the striped ones, as well as all the dark-coloured ones among Laban's flocks. Then he set aside the herds for himself and did not put them with Laban's flocks. Whenever the strong flocks mated, Jacob put the branches in the watering troughs before the eyes of the flocks to have them mate near the branches. But whenever the flocks were sickly, he did not put the branches down. So the sickly ones became Laban's, and the stronger one became Jacob's. And the man grew exceedingly prosperous and had numerous flocks, along with female and male servants, camels and donkeys.
Now Jacob heard the words Laban's sons were saying, "Jacob has taken everything that belongs to our father, and from what belongs to our father he has made all these riches." Then Jacob saw Laban's face, and he noticed that his expression wasn't the same as it was just a day or two before. Then Adonai said to Jacob, "Return to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you." So Jacob sent and called for Rachel and Leah to come to the field to his flock. He said to them, "I can see by your father's face that his expression isn't the same as it was just a day or two ago. But the God of my father has been with me. Now you yourselves know that I've served your father with all my strength. Yet your father has fooled around with me and has changed my salary 10 times, but God hasn't allowed him to harm me. If he would say, 'The spotted ones will be your salary,' then the flocks would give birth to spotted ones. Or if he would say, 'The striped ones will be your salary,' then all the flocks will give birth to the striped ones. So God has taken away your father's livestock and has given them to me. Now it has happened when the flocks were in heat that I lifted up my eyes and saw, in a dream, behold, the males going up to the flocks were striped, spotted, and speckled. Then the angel of God said to me in a dream, 'Jacob,' and I said, 'Hinay.' And he said, 'Lift up your eyes and see that all the males going up to the flocks are striped, spotted, and speckled. For I have seen everything Laban has done to you. I am the God of Beth-El, where you anointed a memorial stone, where you made a vow to me. Get up now and leave this land and return to the land of your relatives.' Then Rachel answered along with Leah, and they said to him, 'Is there still a portion, an inheritance for us in our father's house? Aren't we considered foreigners to him? For he has sold us and has completely used up our bridal price. For all the riches that God has taken away from our father is for us and for our children. So now, everything God said to you, do it.' Then Jacob got up and put his children and wives on camels. He drove away all his livestock and all his possessions that he had acquired, the livestock and his possession that he acquired in Padan Aram, to go to his father Isaac to the land of Canaan. But while Laban went to shear his flocks, Rachel stole the idols that belonged to her father, while Jacob stole the heart from Laban the Aramean by not telling him that he was fleeing. He himself fled with everything that belonged to him, and he got up and crossed the river and set his face to the hill country of Gilead. Laban confronts Jacob and makes covenant. When Laban was told on the 3rd day after Jacob had fled, he took his relatives with him and pursued him 7 days' journey. Then he overtook him in the hill country of Gilead. But God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream at night and said to him, 'Watch yourself, lest you say anything to Jacob, good or bad.' So Laban caught up to Jacob. Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country. So Laban and his brothers pitched their tents in the hill country of Gilead as well. Then Laban said to Jacob, What have you done, that you've stolen my heart and have driven my daughters away like captives of the sword? Why did you secretly flee away and steal from me? Why didn't you tell me, so I could send you away with joy and with songs, with tambourines and lyres? And you didn't even let me kiss my sons and daughters. Now you have behaved foolishly. It is in the power of my hand to do evil to you. But yesterday the God of your fathers spoke to me, saying, watch yourself, lest you say anything to Jacob, good or bad. So now, when you up and left because you really missed your father's house, why did you steal my gods?
In response, Jacob said to Laban, because I was afraid, for I thought, suppose you snatch your daughters away from me. Anyone with whom you find your God shall not live. In front of our relatives, identify whatever is yours that is with me and take it back. But Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and Leah's tent and into the tent of the two maids, but he found nothing. Then he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the idols, put them in the camel saddlebags, and sat on them. So Laban felt around the entire tent, but did not find them. She said to her father, let not my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for I am having the way of women. So he searched, but he did not find the idols. Then Jacob got angry and argued with Laban. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, what's my crime? What's my sin that you've hotly pursued me? For you felt through all my things, and what did you find? Any of your household things? Put them here in front of my relatives and yours, so they can decide between the two of us. These past 20 years I've been with you. Your ewes, your female goats, have never miscarried. I've never eaten the rams of your flock. I didn't bring you animals torn by wild beasts. I myself would bear the loss. You would require it from my hand, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. I was consumed by heat during the day, consumed by frost during the night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. And this is how it's been for me, 20 years in your house? I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flocks, and you changed my salary 10 times. Had I not had the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac, you would have sent me away empty-handed now. But God saw my misery and the toil of my hands, and last night he became the judge. In response, Laban said to Jacob, the daughters are my daughters, and the sons are my sons, and the flocks are my flocks. Everything you see is mine. But what can I do for these, my daughters, today, or for their sons to whom they've given birth? So now, come, let's make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. And Jacob said to his relatives, gather stones. So they took the stones and made a pile, and then they ate there on the pile. And Laban called it Yagir Sachaduduta. I messed up that one. And Jacob called it Galed. And Laban said, the pile is a witness between me and you today, and that is why its name is Galed, or Mitzpah. For he said, let Adonai keep watch between you and me when we are out of one another's sight. If you mistreat my daughters, and if you take wives beside my daughters, though no one is with us, look, God is the witness between you and me. Laban said further to Jacob, behold, this pile and this pillar which I've set up between you and me, this pile serves as a witness that I won't pass by this pillar to go to you, and that you won't pass by this pile and this pillar to go to me with evil intent. May the God of Abraham and the gods of Nahor, the gods of their father, judge between us. And Jacob also made an oath by the fear of his father Isaac. And then Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain, and he invited his relatives to eat bread. So they ate bread and spent the night on the mountain. Early in the morning, Laban got up, kissed his grandchildren and daughters, and blessed them. Then Laban left and returned to his place. While Jacob left on his way, the angels of God met him. And Jacob said when he saw them, "This is God's camp." And he named that place Mahanaim.
Avinu in heaven. Hosea chapter 12. Ephraim multiplies lies. Ephraim surrounded me with lies, and the house of Israel with deceit. Though Judah roams restlessly with God, yet he is faithful with holy things. Ephraim is grazing on wind and pursuing the east wind. All day he multiplies lies and ruin, making a pact with Assyria, while carrying oil to Egypt. Adonai has a dispute with Judah. He will punish Jacob for his ways, repaying him for his deeds. In the womb he grasped his brother's heel, and in his vigor he strove with God. Yes, he wrestled with the angel and won. He wept and sought his favor. At Beth-El he will find us, and there he will speak with us. Even Adonai, Elohei Zavot. Adonai is his memorial name. So you should return to your God, keep covenant, loyalty, and justice, and wait for your God continually. A merchant loves to exhort, with deceptive balances in his hand. Now Ephraim has said, "How rich I have become! I have found wealth by myself. I won't be guilty of any sin with any of my property." Yet I have been Adonai your God, since the land of Egypt. I will yet again make you dwell in tents, as in the days of the Moed. I also spoke through the prophets, and I multiplied visions. Now through the prophets I will make parables. Since Gilead is full of iniquity, they are utterly worthless. In Gilgal they sacrifice bulls. Even their altars will become heaps of rocks along the furrows of my field. Now Jacob fled to the field of Aram, when Israel served for a wife. Yes, he kept watch for a wife. So by a prophet Adonai brought Israel up out of Egypt, and by a prophet he was kept. Ephraim has provoked bitter anger, so his blood guilt will remain on him. His Lord will repay him for his contempt.
When Ephraim spoke, there was trembling, but he became guilty through Baal and died. Now they sin more and more. They made themselves molten images, idols skillfully made from silver, all of them the work of craftsmen. They said to them, "Let those who sacrifice kiss the calves." Therefore, they will be like the morning cloud, like dew passing away early, like chaff blown from the threshing floor, or like smoke from the chimney. Yet I have been your Adonai, your God, since the land of Egypt. You should know no God but me, and there is no Saviour apart from me. So I'll become like a lion to them, like a leopard waiting, lying in wait by the way. I will meet them like a bear robbed of her cubs. Arr!
Return to Israel, to the Lord our Yahweh, for your sins have brought you down. Bring your petitions and return to the Lord. Say to him, "Forgive all our sins and graciously receive us, so that we may offer you the sacrifices of praise. Assyria cannot save us, nor can our strength in battle. Never again will we call the idols we have made our gods. No, in you alone do the orphans find mercy." Yahweh says, "Then I will heal you of your idolatry and faithlessness, and my love will know no bounds. For my anger will be gone forever. I will be to Israel like a refreshing dew from heaven. It will blossom like a lily, and it will send roots deep into the soil like the cedar in Lebanon. Its branches will spread out like those of beautiful olive trees, as fragrant as the cedar forests of Lebanon. My people will return again to the safety of their land, and they will flourish like grain and blossom like grapevines. They will be as fragrant as the vines of Lebanon. O Israel, stay away from idols. I am the one who looks after you and cares for you. I am like a tree that is always green, giving my fruits to you all through the year. Let those who are wise understand these things. Let those who are discerning listen carefully. The path of the Lord are true and right, and righteousness people live by walking in them. But sinners slumber and fall along the way. Can I share something? This is just so amazing. Thank you for this parashah that you have given. I have been actually doing almost 3 weeks now that I'm deeply seeking Yahweh in my life. And every morning now I actually take a communion to acknowledge Him. As you know, that He gave our life to us, and all we do is just to repent. And I've been doing that now for almost 3 weeks, and it's amazing how I can see the goodness of Yahweh in my life. I mean, for about 3 weeks now that I was doing it, and my income, actually, my source of income, for about 4 weeks now too, it's just, I just got nothing, but people comes and handed me money and doing things for me, and I just say, oh Yahweh, you truly are faithful, you know, but all we do is just kind of like seek His face, learn from Him, listen to Him. And it was amazing. I am more actually peaceful now than I used to before. I used to be like, oh, I do this, I do that, and doing it on my own accord. But now I just leave it to Him, and I just say, Yahweh, your joy is my strength. And I just leave everything to you. And it was so amazing. Like this morning, I got handed up some money. And I just like, oh, really are, you are so faithful. And I thank you. Thank you for this word. Because if you actually ask for forgiveness and repent, and this is what you get. It cleanses you, and it really gives you like a confidence and trust in Him. So I just praise Yahweh for His goodness. Thank you.
Okay, let's continue. Matthew chapter 3, verses 13 onwards. Then Yeshua came from Galilee to Yohanan at the Yarden to be immersed by him. But Yohanan was hindering him, saying, I need to be immersed by you, and yet you come to me. But Yeshua answering said to him, Permit it now, for it is thus fitting for us to fulfill all righteousness. Then he permitted him. And having been immersed, Yeshua went up immediately from the water, and see, the heavens were opened, and he saw the Spirit of Elohim descending like a dove and coming upon him. And see, a voice out of the heavens saying, This is my Son, the beloved, in whom I delight. Then Yeshua was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tried by the devil. And after having fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. I'm not surprised. And the trier came and said to him, If you are the Son of Elohim, command that these stones become bread. But he answered, saying, It has been written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Yahweh. Amen to that. Then the devil took him up into the set-apart city, set him on the edge of the set-apart place, and said to him, If you are the Son of Elohim, throw yourself down, for it has been written, He shall command His messengers concerning you, and in their hands they shall bear you up, so that you should not dash your foot against a stone. Yeshua replied and said to him, It has also been written, You shall not try Yahweh your Elohim. Again, the devil took him up on a very high mountain and showed him all the reigns of the earth, of the world, and their esteem, and said to him, "All these I shall give you, if you fall down and worship me." Then Yeshua said to him, "Go, Satan, for it has been written, you shall worship Yahweh your Elohim, and him alone you shall serve." Then the devil left him, and see, messengers came and attended him. And Yeshua, having heard that Yohanan had been put in prison, withdrew into Galilee. And then leaving Nazareth, he came and dwelt in Capharnaum, which is by the sea, in the borders of Zebulun and Naphtali, to fill what was spoken by the prophet Yeshayahu, saying, "Land of Zebulun and land of Naphtali, the way of the sea beyond the Yarden, Galilee of the nations, the people who sat in darkness saw a great light, and upon those who sat in the land and shadow of death, light arose to them." Hallelujah.
First he found his brother Shimon and said to him, "We have found the Messiah," which means the anointed. And he brought him to Yeshua and looked at him. Yeshua said, "You are Shimon, the son of Jonah. You shall be called Kepha," which means a stone. On the following day, Yeshua wished to go to Galilee, and he found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." And Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Kepha. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him who Moshe wrote of in the Torah and the prophets, Yeshua of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." And Nathanael said to him, "Is it possible for any good matter to come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." Yeshua said, "Nathanael, come toward him." Yeshua saw Nathanael coming toward him and said of him, "See, truly, a Israelite, in whom is no deceit." Nathanael said to him, "From where do you know me?" Yeshua answered and said to him, "Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." Nathanael answered and said to him, "Rabbi, you are the Son of Elohim. You are the Sovereign of Israel." Yeshua answered and said to him, "Because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? Greater than that you shall see." And he said to him, "Truly, truly, I say to you, from now on you shall see the heaven opened and the messengers of Elohim ascending and descending upon the Son of Adam."
When you travel the land and actually walk through the areas and parts of Israel that the patriarchs and Yeshua and the disciples walked, you can't help but have all parts of you be stimulated. It's some parts bring tears and some parts really just make your heart palpitate. You certainly see where the difficulties that they faced, the hard parts of life, walking through the deserts and meeting different people who obviously wanted to kill them or wanted to make life really hard. They persevered and pressed on. And that's kind of the message that I'm bringing this morning is about the thing of pressing through, pressing on. Jacob certainly learnt that, didn't he? He learnt to press on. One of the, for us, I'll just some of the walks that we went through, the time we went through, obviously you want to hear a little bit about the travel through the Holy Land. It's an interesting terminology in itself, isn't it? The Holy Land. Well, the Holy Land is the Holy Land because it belongs to God. It doesn't mean that the rest of the world doesn't belong to God, because yes, it does. He created it all. But he said for himself, not only for the Jewish people, the people of Israel, they don't own it. Right? You understand that? The land always belongs to God, Elohim. That's what he says. He says, I will always loan it. And so when people talk about, oh, you should give this away, well, they don't kind of have a right to give things away because it's not theirs to give away. But people will come to understand that once they equate and look at things from the biblical perspective. Once they look at that again, rather than looking at trying to see why my machine doesn't work. I'm trying a new thing. These things here, interesting books. But for us, when we walked at the steps, and some of the most important things for us when we looked at it, we looked from a different perspective that Sharon and I went this time, because we had the privilege of going with 58 other congregational leaders and people involved in things from the Assemblies of God, and they wanted to revisit, as part of the whole movement, they're looking at why and what the defining points are with the denomination, and actually looking at it again and thinking, well, hey, there's more to what we've been doing, and looking at the scriptures and understanding and seeing, well, yeah, our Messiah, Yeshua, is Jewish. And yes, all the things gear towards Yeshua coming back to Jerusalem. So we better start thinking about how that looks and what we're supposed to do to our walk. And so that was an interesting in itself, and it was very exciting to see the light start to go on for many. And they said, how come we hadn't seen this before? But life is kind of a bit like that. Line upon line, precept upon precept. And you and I have had the privilege of, had the light turned on a bit earlier. Be gracious to those that haven't yet. That's what I kind of say. Don't hold back, but be gracious. And to spend time, from the perspective of helping them look at it and understand where the scriptures come from. And some of the places that we actually really, for me, were, I guess, Mount Nebo was interesting. That's on in Jordan, looking on the Moab plains, looking back across, looking towards Jericho, and looking towards Jerusalem and the Dead Sea, and looking and thinking, Moshe stood here and looked across, and he had great dreams, he had great things promised, but then to stand there and think, well, he didn't quite get there because he wasn't allowed. But then everyone else had the privilege of going. And so that was quite an aspect. When you actually stand there and look way out across, you think, well, it definitely wasn't as desert as it is now. It was obviously for them to spark in their mind the concept that, hey, out there was actually things were land of milk and honey, and there was trees and greenery, and it's been reclaimed. They're trying to start to redo things through there to change it. But when he looked out, you stand there and think, wow, I've got this privilege again to stand here where he stood. And actually then you see, oh, well, what a journey. What a journey. And am I that resilient to be able to see things through in my life? You know, when the difficulties come, when no's come, am I still prepared to just break through and go, say, God, that's your will? Another point was when we're looking at up the hills where, and we read this morning, where Yeshua went up there with Satan, you know, on the hill, and I don't know if it's exactly like that, but where Satan says, okay, yeah, throw yourself off, or I'll give you the whole area of the land. And it's a very high cliff face, and you look at you can see where it could well be, and you look out across what Yeshua was looking at, and for him, he went back and he purposely went there just to get closer to his Father. He went into the desert to get closer to his Father. And sometimes, and I think we often want it smooth. I like things smooth, to run smoothly. But sometimes I do need to think, well, hang on, I need to go to get closer. How close do I want to be to God? How close do I want to be to my Father? To walk in his ways and see his ways. There was a lot of places. It was interesting, even seeing where Rehoboam had set up the high places, and just to actually see the things that are there, and think, wow, he knew that the only place they should be worshipping was in Jerusalem, but purposely went against what God had instructed and led an entire 10/12 of a nation down the gurgler. Wow. So when you stand there, the responsibility and you think, from from a perspective as leaders, make sure you hear from God and be obedient to what he says. Don't go down your own path, and because of the consequences. As a result, you've got a nation that's been divided since that point. How many thousands of years? 3,500 years? Now they need to be pulled back again. Well, it wasn't quite that old. It wasn't 3.5. It's 2.5, about 3,000, just under 3,000 years. And it's so important. When we were looking and walking through those areas, we're thinking, wow, God was patient. God is patient. And he's patient with us. Backing up all those periods of time. And even in reading I remember Ephraim, when you read Ephraim and Hosea, man alive. And it says they're still going to go through it for a bit. Till it gets sorted. Till Yeshua's return. Man, you certainly want to really be part of that whole scene, wouldn't you? And God is patient. And it says, and he loves his people. He loves you and me. And being patient it's an incredible thing. I might just stick with the paper. Yeah. So I was just trying to think what other places really stood out this time as well. For me, the main thing was seeing people's hearts change and seeing people, the light being turned on, rather than just going to see different sceneries and different places. And there was a whole lot of amazing places that I hadn't seen before, which actually came to light. And we actually went to a place just out of Arad, which is actually it's called the something of tears, the Fountain of Tears, and it's an artist that's actually created a equation or a big, beautiful, amazing scene with brass, bronze statues, and showing Yeshua looking out on the people. It's a combination of the people that have been through the Holocaust, and it's brought the two together, and it's an incredible. Just being there, it just brings, especially for people who've been through the Holocaust, a lot of non-believing Jews. When they go there, they sit, and it starts to trigger things in their mind. Think that Yeshua was actually there, even through it, and they see the combination, the agony he went through compared to what they went through, and that he's the answer. And it's an amazing piece that's actually been put there, and thousands of people actually go through it. So it's those are the things that really jumped at me, because it's about people. It's about people, what people do, our responses to difficult situations, hard situations, and how we are treating each other, and how we treat God, and how we look to walk in His ways. So we've got a whole lot of photos, and we'll show them a bit later. But it was just really exciting to see even some of the journey that happened today, that happened this time, where they went from Beersheba and going up to where Abraham's town was. The well there. The well's about 70 metres deep, and it takes about 7 seconds for a stone to drop to the bottom. Do you know why? Because gravity is 9.81 metres per second. Okay? And that's why it's about 70 metres. It takes 7 seconds to fall that far. There we are. Bit of mathematics. But it's fascinating. It was wonderful just to see that. And then from where they walked from the Beersheba, then he went up to Beth-El, or Beth-El. Wonderful place, isn't there? You know, and then from there he went to Aran, which is up near the Syrian-Turkey border. And actually, just as an aside, let's really pray for, because we met with people in Amman as well, and many of the Christians who are many of them there are from Mosul and that sort of area. They can't get work. No one wants to know them. The UN doesn't want to know about it. These are Christian Syrians and people from Iraqis. There was doctors. They were all giving voluntarily their time, and think they can't get work. They can't get medical support. They can't get anything, even education for their children. And it's incredible. And many of them, they're wanting to get asylum. They want to come to New Zealand or come to different places. But many countries are just totally ignoring the fact that they even exist. They talk about, even hear about in Syria, they talk about, because there's two factions of Muslim there, one lot becomes a asylum seeker because they are refugees, because it doesn't fit in. But no one wants to talk about the believers. And the believers from, especially also even up around from Nineveh. We know that's, that area which is just a bit further to the east from Mosul, and from, in fact, from Haran. Okay, Haran, which is there. And there are a lot of believers were there. And they just totally displaced. But no one wants to know about them. So write to your MPs, write to the Parliament. Say, look, you're opening the doors. Why don't you allow them to come here? And the problem is, many of them, they are poor and things, but the believers look after each other. And hence, as a result, they don't look like your normal refugee. Often refugees tend to be, with the others, everyone's got nothing and everyone's got looking after their own interests, etc. But these Christians, they try to help each other and look after each other, and they sacrifice incredibly. But no one wants to know them. So pray for them and write to the government about it. So that was wonderful there. So we see in the story, when we're up to where Haran is, it's a dry place up through there. So we'll talk about the trip a bit later, another day, go through things, and we'll have some photos, etc. as part of it. I encourage you to, if you haven't gone. One of the things was, some went and they were baptised in the Jordan, at McVeigh in the Jordan as part of it, and some baptised themselves and others were baptised. As part of the experience, it's not quite the location, it just happens to be, it looks a bit green, it's a bit cleaner than the rest of it, but the area where they think that John the Baptist did the baptising was actually a bit further out. There's hardly any water there. And the lake is so low at the moment, and the water's running out. It's just a bit of an incredible, like a trickle. So, and actually, while I'm on that topic about anyone, God has spoken to them about being baptised, as it speaks to us about walking in His ways, dying to self. I think it'd be wonderful to have in the new year, in the public at the sea, let's have a baptism in the public, okay? Because that's how they do it over there. They don't have a font in the middle of their thing and baptise in the buildings. They baptise publicly, because you do that, you're making a stand and a half, and your life could be at risk, especially through Syria and Iraq and up through there. And for Jewish people in Israel, when they are baptised into Yeshua, people looking on, they become targets for their family. It's a real cost. So here, great opportunity. You're unlikely to be targeted, but it would be a wonderful witness and example. So if you haven't been, here's the opportunity. Fabulous. Well, last week's parashah was about genealogies. And while I'm on the topic, thanks for the message that were provided while we were away. Fantastic. I read them online, and we watched them on the wonderful DVD. You did well. And as a congregation, you're an amazing congregation. Just continuing on, encourage each other, and just leading together. Thank you. Eh? You got a cupcake. I even saw an amazing thing called a tie. Wow, I was impressed. I thought that was unbelievable. I hadn't seen one of those before. Well, maybe I have. But, that was excellent. Thank you for ministering. That was just wonderful. And Stefan's churning along. And we talked back then, last week, it was Isaac's wife, Rebecca, Sharon was talking about, had a difficult pregnancy. There was twin brothers set at the scene. In fact, Adonai warned Rebecca that she'd have two nations in her womb, and the elder Esau would serve the younger. How would you feel knowing that? That you came out first, but you were going to serve the younger? That'd certainly challenge you, wouldn't it? Especially you got a bit older, knowing that, hey, my position is going to be usurped. And how do you hold a good attitude about that if someone says that to you? Well, it's interesting. It's an interesting one. There is some debate as to whether or not you told them, but most mothers can't keep their mouths closed. Am I getting into trouble? No, but most mothers. They like to. They like to warn and prepare their children. It's part of love. It is part of tough love. You know, it's us guys would probably try to keep it a bit silent. You know, us guys, we don't like quite so much of a ruckus, but mothers, they're there to prepare their kids for life, and so I think that's what they need to do. You know, even if it's not that flavoursome or that's cool all the time, it's important that they hear it. So mothers, keep at it. You know, don't shy back. I think too many today do. And it leaves the children in awkward positions. They don't really know who they are or where they are, how to, you know, as individuals. So mothers, keep going. And fathers, endorse it, encourage it. Okay? Had down here that it's God's choice about who goes where. And it's our job to have a relationship with him through prayer and his word, that whatever he does and whatever he chooses, that it will be okay with us. A couple of questions some may have asked. Does prayer actually change God's mind? Or second, does prayer change things? Well, the answer for the first is what? No, God just doesn't change his mind. Sometimes it gives the impression that he has changed his mind as part of it. You know, because, when he said, when we were talking to Abraham, was talking to Adonai, you know, what if, will I? Well, he knew the end from the beginning. We need to understand that God is omniscient. And this is one of the problems that people are talking about today, especially some factions of the believers. They're starting to question or starting to put doubt in people's mind as to how omniscient, how powerful, how all-knowing our God is. Either he's the same at the beginning or he's not. He's not changing. And there's a lot of teaching going around today that, well, society's changing and things changing, so God's changing. Hello? Hello? Something wrong there? Eh? Chuck it out, yeah. There's something wrong there. It says he's the same today as forever, and we need to really understand that. The answer, so the first is no, he doesn't need to change his mind because he knows the beginning from the end. as part of the process, he may give the impression of different things through there, but he knows what the end is. And he set everything in place perfectly to ensure that the outcome he's put in place is going to happen. The answer to the second is that we pray because prayer changes our circumstances and how we see things, and it brings our will into line with his. And these are also the occasions when we receive Adonai's insight and revelation. And that's the importance of prayer. Spending time praying, talking to him. And if it's our Messiah, Yeshua, was good enough for him, then it's got to be good enough for us. It's important that he needed to converse with his Father. So we need to do so also. This week's Parashah describes Jacob's travels in his life. Haran was also called Padan Aram, which is actually near the border of Turkey and Syria. And it was the homeland of Rebekah. And he went there to find a wife and to escape the anger of his brother. It was all his fault, of course. Jacob's fault. He knew better. He knew what he was supposed to have done, didn't he? Unlike Esau, who was described as the outdoors type, he was a bit of a mummy's boy. He was quieter in personality. So having to leave home to save himself, it was no easy feat, because he was brought up to be looked after and cared for, rather than his brother Esau was man of the land, look after himself. So for him to actually go away wasn't straightforward. It's somewhat astounding to think that both he and his mother didn't think through the consequences of their actions. Yep. Jacob may have just received an extraordinary blessing from his father, Isaac, heaven's dew and the earth's riches, an abundance of grain and new wine. But how was he going to benefit from the blessing? Definitely not in the short term. Sometimes we make rash decisions based on a whim or a prayer. It's a challenge to make sure that we hear clearly from God to carry us through hard times. And without speaking with God, then it's all going to be just on your own shoulders. And that's not what it's about. It's about hearing from God, communicating, talking regularly with him. You know, it's an interesting thing. It's how when we in the Shema we says bind it on your hands, on your foreheads. I mean, we don't do that these days. I mean, the Orthodox do. And sometimes we poo-hoo it a bit as part of but actually it's part of the scriptures in terms of the importance is to make sure that we're thinking about the scriptures. We're thinking about God throughout our day, activities. It's flooding our decision making. We have the Ruach within. Realize and remember that the Ruach abides with us. So don't do it in your own steam. You have the questions you need to ask. You're going through things, you want some answers and wisdom. Speak with him, talk with him, let him converse. Meditate, it says, on the word day and night. That's what it kind of means. It doesn't mean you're not doing other things as well. But, ladies probably do it a lot better because they can multitask. But us guys, we give it a pretty good shot as well. Some of us think we can multitask as well. But we get into trouble when we do that sometimes. But definitely conversing and talking throughout the day with God is what it's so important. It will carry you through the hard times, difficult situations, and will help you make good choices. Jacob's ladder reveals that there's constant contact between heaven and earth. It's a picture of the love and faithfulness of God. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him and delivers them. That was Psalms 34:7. The first letter of the alphabet, the Aleph, it looks something like a ladder, if you actually kind of look at it. It's also the first letter of the Hebrew word Adonai, Elohim, Abba, Ahava, that means love. Make no mistake of it, God is love. Because of God's great love for us, he sent Yeshua to earth to be the ladder that bridges the gap between heaven and earth and provides the way to our Father. Jacob's ladder also reminds us that when we fear the Lord, we can expect Abba's continued oversight of our lives. And the angels will protect us from evil. It doesn't mean from the hard times, it will protect us from evil. And there's a difference. We may not see them, but by faith we can know that even if we are without human friends on our journey, and that's sad, but that sometimes seems to happen. But I encourage people to get around each other. Be a friend to the unfriendly. Be there even if they don't necessarily want you there. Because they'll need you one day. We have an unseen angelic being with us to protect and help and encourage us. Jacob's encounter with Elohim in his dream was so vivid and real that he awoke. He was filled with awe, delighting in the presence of Adonai. And for that reason, he called the place Beth-El, house of God. The ancient Jewish rabbis, they viewed this encounter with God as Jacob's spiritual awakening. And it's here that he entered the role of spiritual forefather, moving forward to the promises given to his grandfather Avram. Not only to receive the land, but to bear fruit, to bring blessing to generation after generations of all the earth. And having a God moment like Yaakov, which is actually an epiphany. It's a time of revelation. And it's something that we all need. We all need at a point where we know, and we know beyond a doubt that we know that God is for us and he's there. And if you haven't found that for yourself, then ask someone to help you find it. You know, don't work it through yourself. But it's so important, because when the difficult times come, and they do, and they will, it just helps you rise above it, because you know beyond a doubt that he's there. He's looking after your interest, because he's looking after his own interest. And that's his people. We need to be careful, though, that we don't mistake it for also being an occasion for resetting the clock or wiping the slate totally clean and thinking, oh, well, all things forgotten, all things forgiven. I mean, forgiveness is, it says you remembers no more, it's part of the equation. But there are consequences. And we do live with them. It just like, it's wonderful, he got the amazing revelation that Yaakov was going to have the place as great as a nation as great as the sands of the shore, the seas of the shore, stars. You know, when he was in the dream. He was promised so many wonderful things, and it says that they're going to be blessed and everything else. But it didn't wipe out. He was God's man. It didn't wipe out, though. His conniving, sneaky behaviour, he had to work on that. He had to sort that out. He had to get that right. Man. But we receive added strength to see those situations through, to achieve God's intended outcome. Okay? What perhaps began as a fearful journey simply to save his life was actually a journey to develop his relationship with Elohim himself. It required being forced out of his comfort zone to fulfill God's intention for his life. It says, I am with you and I will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land, and I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised for you. And while Abraham and Isaac had their own personal encounters with God until this time, it seemed that Yaakov had none such a thing. And this was his time. See, perhaps for him, God may have seemed somewhat distant or theoretical, like he is to me, children of many godly men and women today. That is, until God reveals himself in a very personal way, they relied just on their parents' belief. It says, then they will know beyond a shadow of doubt that God is real and that they make him Lord of their lives. Jeremiah 29:13 says, you will seek me and find me when you will search for me with all your heart. And that's so much what we need to do. And what I'm sure most of you do. Which is excellent. In accepting the lordship of Adonai over his life, Yaakov also made a commitment to him. He says, if God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I am taking, I will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's household. Then the Lord will be my God. It's interesting that he kind of bargained a bit, didn't it? But that's kind of a bit of his nature. And that's what got him into trouble last time. But at least he went through that. He said, I'll give you a tenth as well. And Proverbs 3 verse 16 says, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. By the time Jacob arrived at his uncle Laban's land, it seemed that he'd gone through an amazing, remarkable transformation. Jacob's meeting of his bride-to-be at the well, it was reminiscent of Abraham's servant finding a bride of Isaac. And maybe even at the very same well was a divine appointment. The difference on this occasion was that Yaakov falls in love at first sight, with understanding that she is his Bashet. It's a Yiddish word meaning destiny. But the difference is, he was a bit confident and over cocky. He went in and he kissed her, which is a little bit out of normal custom and practice. And as it goes, however, Laban happened to have two daughters. We know that Laban was an equal to Yaakov. He was sneaky and conniving. And Yaakov was a little bit naive to think that he was going to get it handed on a platter. And sometimes for us too, we sometimes think that we come to God and everything will be just nicely on a platter. It's not always the case. God wants to work on our character and change and mould us, renew us. I'm sure most of you could actually read through or listen to the rest of the message, most of the message online. I can always give you a copy of the full message, but for time we won't go through the full message. Most of it, in terms of the scriptures, it's interesting to see the things that actually happened to Jacob. There's a clear parallel of what he did to Esau and to Isaac, and what Laban does actually to Yaakov. It says in the former case, Yaakov, he takes advantage of the fact that his father is blind in order to trick him into believing that he was the younger son. But he wasn't really that stupid. But in actual fact, then also Laban, he actually takes advantage of the nighttime darkness, the blindness. You see the equation, in which Yaakov was actually blind, to make him think that his older daughter, Leah, was in fact Rachel. It could be considered that Yaakov actually received his just deserts. Most of us like to think that, isn't it? It probably is the case, measure for tricking his father. So there's some of the things that we think that, God has set us up and planned a whole lot of things for us, but some things do catch up on us. We've got to work through those. We've got to work through those situations. And he helps us through those. He just doesn't wave a wand and take them all away. But same with Laban was the father of swindlers, and this is why he's called actually Laban the Aramean, which is kind of a nemesis or another thing for being a trickster. When a person's called an Aramean, tacked on the end, they were known as tricksters or people who do different things. And so for him, Jacob kind of got a little bit what was coming to him. And so when he worked all those extra periods of time, he was a bit naive, like I said before, to think that he was going to get it on a platter. In fact, one of the things was the wedding occasion wasn't actually most of us think he was getting married to Leah, but actually was it was a promise that actually happened at a party. Laban organised a party, and that was a bit of a drunken occasion. And so sometimes we put ourselves in further situations. We don't keep our eyes open to make sure that we're not tricked into things. Even as believers, it's important to keep your eyes open. Is it tied up with the word? Is there behaviour? Is there practice? Is everything going to come in line with the scriptures? Is it in line with the scriptures? Really important. In the past, giving people's names was about characters. Our names, the names we receive, are given. When you were born, you were given a name that was related to an occasion. It's not quite so that today, but a lot of parents don't realise that some of the names that they have for their children are actually pretty often in line with how things turn out. We know that centuries later, with part of his epiphany, Jacob's name was changed to Israel. As part of it, to make sure, to show the difference from who he was to what he's proposed to be, what God had planned for him to be. Now, don't forget, he had to grow into that. It didn't just happen overnight. He had to grow into who God had planned for us. And that's the same for us. The situations in our life, the things that happen, we make decisions, give yourself some grace that grow into the person that God has planned for you to be. Hallelujah. Today it's not only the ancient rivalry between brothers which remain, but often for Israel struggles with prophetic scriptures. The issue of who Messiah really is. It's important that you and I are links. Same with people, there's often friction amongst even where you live because of your different beliefs, different belief structures. And increasingly in society that's going to happen more and more. Okay, it is something is. But let us be a link in helping people to have their own revelation and epiphany, especially with our neighbours and those around us, and people of different points of view, different perspectives. Let us be people who will help others to get to that point themselves, to understand that Yeshua, the Messiah, who came and died and was resurrected for them and for us, and that he is soon returning. So let's help people understand that, and let's work that, because God's purposes are clear, and they're clear for you and me. It's clear for everyone. They just don't know yet. Hu Yavo, Yeshua. Yeshua is coming. Let's be prepared. Let's help others be prepared too. Shabbat Shalom.